Well, hey there. Hey, we're continuing our Q&R series on the opening chapters of the book of Revelation. And so question and response is what we're doing here. And so we got in some great questions on Sunday, one of which is in kind of the same vein as when we got in the previous week. And it has to do with what do we know about how the seven churches that are being written to by Jesus in the book of Revelation, what do we know about how they did or didn't respond? So that is a great question, and I'm actually going to save that for Sunday. So tune in Sunday for that. But the other question was also had a similar type of question that came in the previous week, and both questions I think were written somewhat tongue-in-cheek. It's hard to discern tone in an anonymous text, so I'm not sure. But I think regardless of whether it was meant kind of in jest or not, what it surfaces is that we do have this question, and the church at large has this question. And so in both cases, it had to do with the timing of Jesus' second coming. And the reason that becomes a relevant question when we open the book of Revelation, we're only in the opening chapters, and so we're not into all of the part that becomes that people use predictively. But a lot of us will have sat under teaching where we heard people predicting by using their calculations, looking at Revelation and Ezekiel and Daniel and other texts. People looking at those things and trying to discern a timeline and say, we can say with quite a bit of certainty Jesus is coming back, sometimes as specific as a certain day. That has certainly happened in church history. Sometimes within, it's a broader window, but it's like maybe it'll happen this year or something along those lines. If you've been in the church for any amount of time, you've probably been exposed to that. And you may have studied to that end yourself or even taught it. And the problem that creates, it comes from a good place because it comes from a place of saying, we're as sincere followers of Jesus. If we can figure out when he's coming back, we want to be ready and we want to help others get ready. So it comes from a sincere place. But what it ignores is the words of Jesus, where he actually told us in Mark 13 and also in Matthew, he said that we wouldn't know, that his followers wouldn't know the precise time or hour. In fact, I just want to read that because it comes out of Mark 13. The context for that is he had said some pretty dire things about the destruction of Jerusalem, which made his disciples automatically associate that with the end of time and saying, okay, well, if that must be the end times, if you're talking about destruction of Jerusalem, when will these things happen? It picks up in verse 3. Tell us, Andrew asked him privately, when will these things be? What will be the sign of all these things that are about to be accomplished? So Jesus then goes into quite a bit in Mark 13, and I'm not going to unpack that right now. I have a message that I taught specifically on this exact chapter, this precise chapter, several years ago, I think back in 2021. And so we're going to include a link to that message. If you'd like to see that whole message and see Mark 13 unpacked in what I think is what Jesus intended inductively, we'll include a link so you can watch that. But I just want to jump forward to the end, and this is what Jesus says. This is picking up in verse 32. He says, but concerning that day and that hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son. And I think he's specifically referring to in his incarnate humanness, he didn't know the date, but only the Father. So be on guard, keep awake, for you do not know when the time will come. And then he goes on to unpack that a little bit more. So the interesting thing to me that I think is maybe a misguided understanding of the literature style of Revelation is when we then think we can take Revelation and use it to create a timeline that if we just study it and look at the dates and the numbers and the symbols and that we can actually assign a timeline and discern when he'll come back. I don't think Jesus was asking us to read between the lines and when he says, no one knows, but you can know if you look really carefully. I don't think that's what was going on. And so historically, whenever that's happened, it's led to disappointment because people, will prepare their hearts and sometimes do some pretty extravagant things with their lives in order to, in theory, get ready for the second coming. And then when it doesn't happen, people are left disillusioned, discouraged. It can play out in all kinds of negative ways. And some of you may have, experienced that. It's interesting. There's been predictions of Jesus' return throughout church history, beginning in the first century. From my cursory study of it, it looks like they've ramped up quite a bit in the last 2 centuries, with people signing very specific dates and whatnot. But every one of those predictions has been false, right? Those have been false prophecies. And so the question is, how do we discern God's word faithfully? And the message over and over that we're told is that we won't know the precise time, and so we're to live as ready. Every generation, even going back to the first century, have lived with a sense that it could happen soon, that the way things were shifting, that it felt like it was imminent. And so you even have Peter saying things like that, and Paul saying that in the first century. I think 1 Peter 4, Peter says, the end of all things is near, right? And so that's what faithfulness actually looks like. It looks like for us to live with the expectation and the anticipation that it could be at any moment, to be ready for his return, and to be actively inviting other people into the kingdom right now. That we're not, So hopefully that kind of touches on the question. That's how we're approaching it. We're not going to be using Revelation to try and discern the exact date or even the exact month or year of Jesus' return. We're going to listen to what Jesus said in Mark and Matthew, where he said, you won't know, so be ready. And that's our heart, is that as we listen to these letters being written to the churches, that we would cultivate a posture of saying, we want to be that church that has ears to hear what Jesus would say to us. That's what it looks like to be ready, to be living with that anticipation. So, great questions. Keep them coming. We'll be back on Sunday with the second letter to the churches. This one's going to be to Smyrna, and so you'll be able to submit more questions then on Revelation or on the message itself. And I think we're going to include one more link. We'll include that link to Mark, but we're also going to include a link to a Bible Project analysis of Revelation. So we did already look at the Bible Project video on apocalyptic literature, the literature style of Revelation, but we didn't look at their actual analysis of the book. And they did a great job with it. It's in 2 parts. So we're going to post part 1. All right. See you guys Sunday.